Imagine a child. Not a warrior. Not a king. Not an army. A child. A boy of 7 years, with a peacock feather in his hair and bare feet on the earth, who looks at the rage of the heavens, looks at the walls of black cloud, and the columns of rain that are erasing the world around him, looks at the trembling faces of the people he loves, and then simply bends down and lifts an entire mountain. Not with a divine weapon. Not with an army of gods at his back. With one finger. For 7 days and 7 nights. And the mountain does not fall. This is not a metaphor. This is not a symbol to be unpacked in a philosophy classroom. This is what the Bhagavata Purana, the Vishnu Purana, and the Harivamsa all record, one of the most staggering events in the entire sweep of Indian mythology. The lifting of Mount Govardhan. But here is what most people never ask: why did it happen at all? Because the miracle, as extraordinary as it is only the surface. What lies beneath it, the argument that started it, the pride that fueled the storm, and the lesson that a 7-year-old taught the King of Heaven, that is the real story. And once you hear it properly, you will understand why this moment is considered not just the most miraculous but the most philosophically radical event in the life of Krishna. I am your host, Guru Acharya, and I welcome you all to this exciting new episode of the channel, The Eternal Odyssey, where we explore the stories of myths and fantasies. Chapter 1: The World of Vrindavan and the God they feared. To understand why Krishna lifted a mountain, you must first understand the world he grew up in, and the God who ruled it. Vrindavan in the age of Krishna was not a city. It was a living landscape of forests and rivers and open grassland, a world where the boundary between the human and the divine was so thin you could feel it dissolve on certain mornings when the mist rose off the Yamuna and the peacocks called out from the trees. The people of Vrindavan were Gopas and Gopi, people whose entire existence was tied to the land, to their cattle, to the rhythms of rain and harvest. They did not have generals or philosophers or priests interpreting complex ritual texts. They had cows and crops and community, and above all, they had the sky. And the sky belonged to Indra. Indra was not merely a god in the Vedic imagination, he was the king of the Devas, the lord of thunder and rain, the wielder of the Vajra, the celestial thunderbolt that no being in the 3 worlds could withstand without being destroyed. He was, in every practical sense, the God who decided whether you lived or died. Because without rain there was no grass, and without grass there was no fodder, and without fodder the cattle died, and without cattle the Gopas of Vrindavan had nothing. Every harvest, every full belly, every healthy calf born in the season, all of it traced back to Indra's generosity. And so, year after year, generation after generation, the people of Vrindavan performed their great autumn worship, the Indra Puja. They gathered their finest foods, their purest offerings, their most fervent prayers, and they sent them upward to the King of Heaven, in gratitude and in hope. It was not questioned. It was not examined. It simply was, as natural and unalterable as the rising of the sun. Until one autumn, a dark-skinned boy with laughing eyes and a flute at his lips looked at all of this and quietly asked, "Why?" Chapter 2: The question that changed everything. Krishna was not a god who announced himself. This is one of the most extraordinary aspects of his character across every text that tells his story. He did not descend into Vrindavan in a blaze of light, proclaiming his divinity and commanding devotion. He grew up there. He stole butter and got scolded by his mother. He played in the dirt with the other children of the village. He herded cows through the forests. He knew the name of every tree on the path to the Yamuna. He was, in the experience of the people who loved him most, simply their boy, magnificent and mischievous and somehow, inexplicably, the center of everything. And it was precisely from this position, as one of them, as a child who knew their lives from the inside, that Krishna asked his question. He approached his father Nanda, the chieftain of the Gopas, as the preparations for Indra Puja were underway, and he asked, with the innocent directness that only children and gods can sustain simultaneously, why they were doing this. Nanda, gentle and wise, explained what every adult in Vrindavan knew. Indra gives the rain, and without rain we cannot survive. It is our tradition. It is our duty. It is the right thing to do. Krishna listened to this explanation with the careful attention he always gave to everything, and then he offered another point of view. He pointed to the mountain that stood at the edge of their world, Govardhan, green and generous, rising from the earth like a vast, breathing presence. He pointed to the forests that covered its slopes, the streams that poured from its rocks, the herbs and grasses that grew on its sides and fed their cattle through every season. He said, "This mountain gives you everything you need. The grasses your cows eat, the water your families drink, the shelter your herds find in storms, all of it comes from Govardhan. Indra does not walk among you. Indra does not know your names. But this hill stands here every day, providing for you every day. Should your gratitude not follow your actual life? Should you not worship the one who truly sustains you?" Chapter 3. A village makes a choice, and a god takes offense. What Krishna was doing in that moment was something far more radical than a child changing a festival. He was challenging the entire architecture of fear-based devotion. He was asking whether worship offered out of terror of punishment was truly worship at all, or whether real devotion had to flow from genuine recognition, from seeing clearly who or what actually nourishes your life and offering your gratitude there, honestly and without pretense. The Gopas listened. And remarkably, because Nanda's son had a way of making the complicated feel simple and the revolutionary feel obvious, they agreed. The Indra Puja was cancelled. The offerings that had been prepared for the King of Heaven were redirected. The families of Vrindavan carried their garlands and their fruits and their prayers not toward the sky but toward the mountain. They walked to the base of Govardhan, and they worshipped it, not as an idol, not as a symbol, but as a living presence that had sustained them in ways too numerous and too intimate to count. It was, by every measure, one of the most beautiful acts of religious honesty in the entire Mahabharat Puranic tradition. And it was also, in the cosmic economy of divine pride, an act of war. Because somewhere above the clouds, in the vast and gleaming halls of Swarga, Indra received the news that the Gopas of Vrindavan had not performed his puja. The messengers who brought this information would have chosen their words carefully, because what they were describing, a village of cowherds cancelling the worship of the King of Heaven on the advice of a small boy, was precisely the kind of thing that caused Indra to reach for his Vajra. Chapter 4. The Fury of the King of Heaven. The Bhagavata Purana does not soften Indra's reaction. It records it with the unflinching honesty that makes this text so extraordinary. The king of the gods was furious, and his fury was not a righteous fury. It was wounded pride. It was the rage of someone who had been accustomed to absolute deference encountering, for the first time, the possibility that the deference was not deserved. Indra called upon Samvartaka, the clouds of dissolution, the storm clouds that appear not at the end of a dry season, but at the end of an age. These were not ordinary monsoon clouds. They were the clouds that the texts describe as carrying the capacity to flood not just villages but worlds, to reign with a force and duration that could unmake what the earth had spent centuries building. Indra commanded them to go to Vrindavan. He commanded them to destroy it. He did not issue this command with any anguish or doubt. He issued it the way powerful people throughout history have issued commands to punish those who refuse to submit, quickly, completely, and without a second thought for the lives in the balance. The clouds obeyed. They gathered over Vrindavan like a closing fist, black and massive and so thick that the sun vanished entirely from the sky, plunging the village into a darkness that felt less like nightfall and more like erasure. Then the rain began. Not the gentle rain of a monsoon morning, not even the heavy rain of a mid-season storm. This rain was a weapon. It fell in walls, in columns, in solid sheets that flattened crops in seconds and turned the paths of Vrindavan into rivers within the hour. The Yamuna began to rise. The ground became water. The cattle, frantic and confused, began to slip and fall. The children of the Gopas clung to their mothers in the dark, listening to the world come apart around them, and understood with the clarity that only pure fear brings that this was not weather. This was punishment. They had angered something enormous. And now it intended to erase them. Chapter 5. The child who answered the storm. The people of Vrindavan ran to Krishna. Where else could they go? He had been the one who had asked them to make this choice, and they had made it, and now the sky was falling, and if there was any power in the universe that could answer what Indra had unleashed, it lived in the dark eyes of this boy who had never, in all the years they had known him, looked afraid. And he was not afraid now. The accounts describe what happened next with a simplicity that is more astonishing than any elaborate description could be. Krishna walked to the base of Mount Govardhan. He reached down. He placed the tip of one finger, his left hand, his small, dark, 7-year-old finger, beneath the vast mass of rock and earth and forest that constituted the mountain. And he lifted it. He lifted it the way a child lifts a mushroom from the ground. He lifted it without effort, without ceremony, without so much as a change in his expression. And then he stood there, this boy, this child of Vrindavan, this butter thief and flute player and keeper of cows, and he held the mountain above the village like an umbrella. He called to the Gopas. He told them to come, all of them, all the families, all the cattle, every living thing that sheltered in Vrindavan, to come and stand beneath the mountain. To bring what they could carry and leave what they could not. And they came. Thousands of people and hundreds of cattle, pressing together beneath the canopy of rock that hung in the air above them, sheltered from the rain that Indra continued to pour down with everything he had. The storm raged. The mountain did not move. Krishna's finger did not tremble. For one day he held it. Then 2. Then 3. The rain intensified, as if Indra, unable to believe what he was seeing, poured more fury into the clouds in the hope that sheer volume would accomplish what force had not. 4 days. 5. 6. On the 7th day, as the Bhagavata Purana records it, Indra finally stopped. Not because he had run out of rain. Because he had run out of pride. Chapter 6. The God who learned to see. What broke Indra was not the impossibility of what he was witnessing, though it was impossible. What broke him was the understanding of what it meant. A 7-year-old child had stood between a village and the full destructive power of the King of Heaven, and the village had not been destroyed. 7 days of the most devastating storm the three worlds had seen since the dissolution of ages, and everyone beneath that mountain was dry and warm and alive. The cattle were safe. The children were unharmed. And the boy holding the mountain above them had not, in 7 days and 7 nights, shifted his weight or changed his expression or given any indication that holding a mountain on his finger was different from holding a flower. This was not a contest of power. This was a revelation. Because Indra, in that moment of stopping, began to understand something that his pride had made impossible for him to see before. He understood who this child was. Not intellectually, Indra had knowledge of the divine hierarchies, he was aware of the avatars, he had access to cosmic information that ordinary beings could not reach. But there is a vast difference between knowing something and understanding it, between having information and being transformed by it. For 7 days, Krishna had shown him the difference. He had shown him what true power looked like, not the power that destroys, not the power that punishes those who do not offer tribute, but the power that shelters, that sustains, that stands between the vulnerable and the storm without asking anything in return. Indra descended from Swarga. He came to Vrindavan not as the king of heaven and not in wrath, but as a student comes to a teacher, with humility, with recognition, and with the particular quality of awe that only a shattered certainty produces. He stood before Krishna, this boy with the mountain still balanced effortlessly above him, and he bowed. The king of the gods bowed to a child of 7. And in that bow was everything, the acknowledgement that the universe had a center of gravity he had not previously located, that the devotion he had demanded from the Gopas was a small and fearful thing, compared to the devotion Krishna had just demonstrated by standing in the rain for 7 days with their lives in his hands. Chapter 7. The lesson written in stone and rain. When Indra bowed before Krishna and apologized, and the Bhagavata Purana records his apology as one of the most theologically rich passages in the entire text, he was not merely admitting that he had been wrong to send the storms. He was acknowledging something far larger. He was acknowledging the difference between 2 entirely different relationships with the divine. The first is the relationship built on transaction and fear. You worship because something terrible will happen if you don't. You offer prayers not from love but from self-protection. Your devotion is a kind of payment, a toll you pay to avoid catastrophe. The Indra Puja that the Gopas had performed for generations was, in its purest form, this kind of worship. It was genuine, yes. It was sincere in its way, yes. But its foundation was fear. Indra withholds rain, we suffer. So we worship Indra. The calculation was practical and the emotion was real, but the engine running underneath it was terror. The second relationship is what Krishna was pointing toward when he redirected the Gopas' worship to Govardhan. Worship the mountain because it actually sustains you. Worship it with clear eyes and an open heart, not because you are afraid of what it will do if you don't, but because you genuinely recognize what it does for you every single day. This is devotion without transaction. This is gratitude without leverage. This is the difference between bhakti, true loving devotion, and ritual obligation performed under the shadow of divine power. And then Krishna went further still. He demonstrated the second model in the most dramatic way possible. While Indra was punishing a village to reassert his power, Krishna was sheltering it, Not because the Gopas had paid him in prayers, not because they had performed his puja correctly, not because they had fulfilled any ritual obligation. He sheltered them because he loved them. Because they were his people. Because that is what love does when the storm comes, it holds up whatever it must to keep the ones it loves from being destroyed. That is the lesson written in 7 days of rain and one boy's steady finger. Chapter 8. Why this story still matters. The lifting of Mount Govardhan is remembered in Vrindavan every year on the day after Diwali, a festival called Annakut or Govardhan Puja, when devotees pile enormous quantities of food as an offering to the mountain, recreating in color and joy and abundance the moment when the Gopas first turned toward Govardhan with open hands. It is one of the most joyful festivals in the entire Vaishnav calendar, and its joy is not incidental. It is the point. Because the story of Govardhan is ultimately a story about what happens when fear is replaced by love as the engine of devotion. The Gopas who stood beneath that mountain for 7 days were not afraid of Krishna. They were not worshipping him because he had threatened them. They were sheltering beneath him because he had chosen, without being asked, to stand between them and destruction. That is a completely different relationship with the divine than anything Indra had ever offered them. And the mountain itself, Govardhan, is still there. Still green. Still rising from the plains of Braj in Uttar Pradesh, drawing millions of pilgrims who walk its circumference, called the Parikrama, barefoot and in devotion, touching its rocks with their foreheads, pressing marigolds into its crevices. They are not worshipping a hill. They are returning to the site of the greatest lesson in the Puranic tradition, that the divine is not something you placate from a distance with offerings born of fear. The divine is the one who stands in the rain so you don't have to. The divine is the one holding the mountain up so you can breathe. And if you are very still, and very honest, and very willing to look at where the sustenance in your life actually comes from, you might discover that this has been true all along, and that all it ever required of you was the courage to see it clearly. A 7-year-old boy held a mountain above his people for 7 days and 7 nights, and asked for nothing in return. All he required was that they step into the shelter he was offering. That's it. That's the whole story. And this channel exists to make sure stories like this one are never lost, never reduced to a line in a textbook, never rushed past in a list of mythology facts, but told the way they were always meant to be told, slowly, completely, and with the weight they deserve. If this story moved something in you, if it made you think, or wonder, or feel the rain on the plains of Vrindavan, then step into the shelter of this community. Hit that like button and let the algorithm know this kind of storytelling matters. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, a friend, a family member, anyone who has ever stood in a storm and needed to be reminded that shelter exists. And subscribe, because every week we return to the ancient world and bring back something that was always meant for you. The mountain is still standing. The story is still alive. And we will never stop telling it. See you until next time. Thank you.